Hi all, welcome back to the final whistle for the season review so far. We're going to chat with Rob Tanner from the Athletic. We're also going to be joined by big, strong Leicester boys, Ric Flair, who we're going to get into Rick about Steve Cooper. A lot to discuss regarding the season so far. 9 games in, 2 cup games, 7 league games. New manager and everything like that, you know, new style of football, players performing well, some are getting left out. But yeah, we're going to chat about it all. We're going to get everyone involved. We're going to ask Rob about different things as well. Hello, Jack. See you next Thursday for the Premier League predictions weekend. Sometimes you always miss some of mine. All right, okay. Yeah, well, I'll try getting them all on. Hello to everybody. Evening, Michael. Evening, Leicester Till I Die. Evening, Rossi, LCFC 1993. Let's get my first guest in from the Athletic, Rob Tanner. Rob, how are you, mate?
Good evening. Yeah, I'm good.
Good. Ric Flair, woo. Ross, I don't think you're going to get that type of Ric Flair, the one off wrestling, but you can have the one from Big Strong Leicester, boys.
That's the Ric Flair I remember.
Oh, the Poundland version.
It's Ric Flair from Wish Ross.
The Steve Cooper version.
Limousine riding, plane riding, oh yeah, all that sort of stuff. Love that.
Rob, let me ask you about what you do at the Athletic, mate. Let the viewers know. Any offers at the minute?
I'm not sure. There normally is for new customers. I mean, the ones that have stayed loyal tend to have to pay the full whack, but there's always ways around that. Yeah, I'm the Leicester City writer for the Athletic, and I've been covering them for about 16 years.
Fantastic. Rick, talk to me about the Big Strong Leicester boys, mate. Great podcast to listen to. Some controversial stuff gets said. A lot gets said regarding the football club, but we all love it as Leicester fans. But talk to me about the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I was invited on. I don't know whether they regret doing so, but I joined in December 2022, just before the nosedive to relegation. But yeah, the podcast is, it still amazes me how well we've done. I can't take much credit for that. That's got to be Jake Jordan and Jack when he was on. But no, it's brilliant. You know, we do get involved in a lot of other things, for example, associated with LAMP, the charity. And we are running half marathon, me and Jake, on Sunday to raise money for LAMP. So, you know, they're the things that I really get enjoyment out of. The pain and anguish of following Leicester and having to get angry on a podcast is the sort of occupational hazard.
I think what's good about you guys is you're all different characters as well. You've all got a different take on things, and it bounces off each of you as well. So it's always worth a listen. I find it. I do listen to it wherever I am.
It's always ominous if we agree. You know, when me and Jordan agree, that's when we're really in trouble. When Jordan's negative as well, which he's not now.
Yeah, Jordan's ultra positive. He tries to be ultra positive, doesn't he?
He is, and you know him very well, Rob.
Yeah, I do, because he works at the Athletic.
He does.
There's a lot of that in football, isn't there, Rob? Positive fans, negative fans. Some who will sit on the fence.
That's what this is what drives, you know, your show as well. It's opinion. It's people have different takes on things, and I'm really interested. I'm looking at the comments now because I really want to get a gauge of how Leicester fans are feeling at the start of this season, because you know, I'm getting lots of mixed sort of messages from social media and stuff like that, how people actually feel. So I'm really interested tonight.
Yeah, Leicester fans, if you've got any questions for Rob or even Rick, get them in the comments. I'll try and get the lads to answer as many as I can. But let's rewind it to before the start of the season. Enzo Maresca leaves to Chelsea. Steve Cooper comes in as Leicester City manager. Rick, I'm going to come to you first on this one. Talk to me how you felt with the whole Maresca and Cooper saga.
So, I mean, I was quite critical of Maresca back end of last season. I felt his stubbornness and unflinching ways when it looked like we may well scup a top two. I'm very trigger happy when it comes to managers anyway, as you may well know. There's probably not a manager in the history of Leicester, bar maybe Ranieri in the year we won the league, where I've not abused them somewhere along the line. But so Maresca going, I certainly, and maybe others, probably kidded ourselves that might not be a bad thing. It might be a blessing in disguise, because style of football could be exposed without the necessary players at Premier League level, playing possession football. So I think when he left and we were getting the 10 million in, which we badly needed to comply with PSR, I think we were mildly excited for what we might get instead. Maybe somebody who's pragmatic, who would view what the qualities of the squad are and would cut their cloth accordingly, whether that's to play possession-based football or to play a counter-attack, attacking, defensive midfield, whatever. So when the news broke that it was going to be Steve Cooper, I certainly wasn't very happy. But
I don't think we all was, to be fair.
No, it isn't that. You wouldn't be, would you? But as the dust settled, you've got to try and pick up. You've got to back them. You've got to pick the positive. And the thing that I tried to hang my hat on, which is turning out to be a complete myth, is that Steve Cooper is very, very proactive and progressive at developing young players. And that notion has come from him winning the World Cup with England under 17s. Well, he had no choice but to pick under 17 players. I reckon if he could have picked 30-year-olds that with Premier League experience, he would have done. But he had to pick those players. And at Swansea, he did have a couple of academy players he brought through. But at Nottingham Forest and at Leicester, he's not been overly interested with young players. And that is a major concern of mine, because one of my number one priorities is academy development and young players in general. I don't want us to stay up for the sake of it if it's very short-term outlook. I want us to build something. So he quite quickly dispelled that myth. And that's where my anger towards him has stemmed. And the pre-season, and I've just found it very difficult since then to really swallow my sort of long-term concerns about him, because I just struggled to. That was my sort of take in the summer. I'm still struggling to understand the identity. I think he is. I don't think he has one, personally. I think he's the equivalent of a ham sandwich in your £5 meal deal. Nobody would pick plain ham, would they? But here we are. We have.
There you go. Rob, what was your thoughts on the Maresca leaving? Cooper obviously coming in. We spoke about it previous.
Well, just on the ham sandwich situation, I go up my local on a Sunday lunchtime and they do ham salad cobs, and I always pick one. There's cheese, there's chutney, but I always pick the ham salad. So I'm in the ham salad.
There's a correlation here then, Rob, with your thoughts on Steve.
In terms of youth, Caleb Bacoli has been, I think, the signing of the summer. I think this kid's going somewhere. The fact that he's already in the Italian squad, the senior squad, I think there's something there. And Facundo Buonanotte has been, I mean, I know we're going to get to players of the start of the season so far, but I think he's a good sign. I'm a little concerned about this groin issue that Steve Cooper's mentioned, but I think that the Abdul Fattah situation is one of the reasons why people think he might not have as much faith in youth as Enzo would have done. I mean, I think Enzo put a lot of faith in young players. Ben Nelson was ahead of Conor Cody and Yannick Vestergaard last season, and he's out on loan at Oxford this season. I think in hindsight, Steve would probably want to have kept Ben this season, but I think he just wanted to not stand in his way, make sure that he's getting some experience, and he's going to get a lot of experience at Oxford this season. You know, he's going to be under the cosh. He's got Elliot Moore next to him as well, which is a fantastic little side story as well. I think he has. I think he will play youth, but I think he's pragmatic. He's very pragmatic in terms of he understands that. You know, in the minds of a lot of Leicester fans, and I mean this totally respectfully, they just remember finishing in the top 8 for 3 years running, and then suddenly there was the shock and awe of that relegation season, and they were a newly promoted side back to the Premier League, but they're way off being anywhere where they were before. And I think he's putting a little bit of faith in trying to get some experience in the side as well, people that can, you know, been there, done it, and can keep them up. But I'm not sure. You know, you go with talent at the end of the day, and sometimes these young kids as well, they've not been burdened by the experience of a relegation. You know, they're fresh. I mean, you obviously have to judge it as the season goes along. If they're experiencing some really bad sort of beatings as well, that's going to have an impact. But so far, from what I've seen as well, Leicester are hanging in every game. I mean, they're not like dominating games as we're expecting them from last season, but certainly they're hanging in, and they're showing a lot of fight. So there's questions about the creativity of the team and whether they're too defensive and too negative. But I, from what I've seen so far, there hasn't been a question of whether they're fighting. I think there's a lot of energy in the team, and that's where he's gone. I mean, he looked in the last game. Harry Winks, Vestergaard's nowhere near the side at the moment as well. Harry Winks is outside. Ricardo's not featured 1 minute in the Premier League. All three were integral to Enzo last season because they could play and they could pass through the lines, and they were very technical players. I think Cooper's going the other way. He's going for runners. He's going for energy. He's trying to go for a battling quality. Let's see if it works out.
That's something you get, Rick, innit, from different managers. You obviously get Maresca, you know, the likes of Abdul Fatawu last season, Ricardo, Vestergaard, pivotal players. Mavadidi's been spoke about this season so far, where he didn't get a chance in the first game of the season, did he? You know, really. They were pivotal players last season. Steve Cooper comes in and changes all that, and then you bring in the likes of Michael Golding from Chelsea, who's in the under-23s, who's not going to sniff in the first team, and you're thinking, £5 million you just paid for Michael Golding, you're not even giving him a chance. It's how do you look at things like that from a fan perspective?
Well, that's it's a good point. I think that's where the questioning started, because I mean, I saw one of the comments just flash up there around this season. The mandate has got to be stay up at all costs. The EFL are waiting for us, and if we go back down, there you go from Ray. You know, we won't come back up for a long while. Now, I get that. And that is a strong possibility. And ironically, it's more of a possibility because we have taken our actions where we've challenged the Premier League and the PSR charge, and them having no jurisdiction to charge us for 22-23. Therefore, it may well fall to the EFL. That makes it more of a concern to go back down, because we may well then get a points deduction from the EFL rather than get one in the Premier League, and you know, having to deal with that. So I get that. However, roll back to pre-season, and Steve Cooper was playing the likes of Hamza Chowdhury in the 10 position. We had no attacking midfielders at that point. Buonanotte hadn't signed. El Khanous hadn't signed. He said he was moaning and chuntering on that he hadn't got his creative midfielders in, and he wanted them, fine. But he had a perfect opportunity to give Will Alves and Golding a chance. Maresca, the summer before, had no wingers. And he gave Casey McAteer and Wanya Marshall minutes. Now, one went on to make a fair impact. The other had a brief fleeting impact on them. But what happened there was McAteer was given an opportunity and he was fairly impressive in pre-season. He carried that on. But had Maresca not picked him, he at very least would have got a loan move to probably the Championship or League One. Had Alves been given a chance in pre-season or even on the bench in the first couple of Premier League games, when again we had no El Khanousi, and he opted to stick with Samare and had Hamza on there as well. He had 2 or 3 defensive midfielders on the bench. So whilst Rob has quoted that Okoli's been given he's a young player, as is Buonanotte, and I accept that. It's not that he won't play any. This isn't like a Mickey Adams back in 2003, 2004, when it was, Scott Gemmell, Nathan Blake, the who's who of players just, having one last hurrah that came to Leicester. He's trying to provide a blend, but we're very used to in the last few regimes of, more often than not, it's a young squad with a smattering of experience. And again, ironically, this isn't a newly promoted Premier League team that's been out of the Premier League for a decade, like it was when we came up in 2013-14. We were down there for a year, and you go through that squad, and Rob's just name-checked Vestergaard and Ricardo. Ricardo's not played a single minute in the Premier League this season. He was arguably one of our best players last season, and he was arguably one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League for a few years, injuries aside. Now, we get that he's probably not that anymore. We know that. But he's good enough to play at least 1 minute in the first 7 Premier League games. And it's an insult. And I do think in dropping Vestergaard, in marginalising Ricardo, Mavridi's had to prove his worth. Fatawi's having to prove his worth. He's trying to stamp his authority, which is fine. Every manager's got to make an impact. But at the same time, he's coming across as this trying to be relaxed and I'm trying to get the fans on board and do this. There's more than meets the eye with Cooper, and there's no smoke without fire with some of the stuff coming out about whether the players are struggling with him. I don't think he's the right fit for this club.
Yeah, I've kind of with Cooper, Rob, talking off air about him, his style of football, this low block football, and with Cooper, it's like we reiterate with substitutions. I mean, the timing of who he brings on and who he brings off, and we're sitting there. It's like sometimes you're questioning the game plan. What is the game plan? It's like, do you feel as a reporter, like watching it from the stands, because obviously you get a good view from where you sit. I read some of your tweets during the game and I think, what's Rob Tanner got to say on this? And then you'll say it and I think, thinking the same on that. But how are you feeling like regarding the whole Cooper regime and that? Obviously fans are frustrated, and rightfully so, because they pay their money to go and watch Leicester City. They have a right to have an opinion. As fans, if you want to feel frustrated, you can do. It is the way football works. But talk to me about Cooper. Obviously, in the media, some say he speaks very well in it, but his style of football, you can see with the players at times, they're confused. You looked at it, Walsall, and being taken to penalties, and then other games, you're thinking, the guy doesn't have a plan, does he? It's like I don't think he really knows his best 11 either, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, loads of elements to that question, Jack. We'll start off in terms of the plan. In terms of the plan, he has got a plan, but it's not as defined as Enzo. Yeah. Enzo would literally be on the training ground, stopping sessions and walking over and moving players physically. Say, you should be here in this scenario. You should pass here at this scenario. You should pass there. You should be moving here. It was so orchestrated. And we're seeing this at Chelsea now as well. They're adapting to this. It is like, You know how it's the cliche, isn't it? He talked about chess and wrote about chess in his training thesis and all that. And that's literally how he was. He was moving pieces around the training ground, stopping sessions. And Steve Cooper is totally different. He's he has a structure. He wants a structure at the back with a high fullback and one sitting in. So it still looks a bit like Enzo. They go to a back three, high, but he has two defensive midfielders in front of a back three, and the fullback becomes one of the fifth attackers. Where you can debate the theory of that, because he's not a natural attacking player, so why not have the Enzo scenario where you've got defensive players in there? But there is a plan. But once they get into the opposition half, it seems to me, and he said it himself, it seems to be open to interpretation. Then the emphasis is on the players to make decisions. It's a decision-making situation for them. So there's freedom for them to. And I think some of the players are uncomfortable with that a little bit, having come from the Enzo Maresca scenario where they're going, well, where do you want me to be? Where
they need support.
Where am I attacking? We've got one winger coming inside. Steffi, might be Steffi Mavididi. If Fatawa's playing, it's definitely Fatawa staying wide because he don't come in and play a 10. So it's normally Jordan Ayew coming in and playing as a 10, Stefan Mavididi staying wide, and they all look a little bit like they're just still trying to adjust to it all. And I think the lack of clarity sometimes could be an issue. I mean, you mentioned substitutions there as well. I've got a piece running in the morning where I've looked at his substitutions, how much impact I've had when they're coming in the games. Coming so late. I mean, they are the latest substitutions in the Premier League. I think it's 54% of the changes have come in the last from 80 minutes onwards. I mean, obviously it's a different scenario in terms of added time these days. We get so much more added time, but from 80 minutes onwards, something like 54% of his substitutions coming in. And that's really strange for me because they can't make much of an impact in that time. So there's lots of elements to what's happening at the moment in terms of I'm still studying and getting used to, and my mind is open still a little bit in terms of Steve Cooper. I'm still making my mind up. I mean, some fans have obviously made their decision in terms of how they think he's going to be as a Leicester manager. And when I was at Walsall, I heard if you weren't there, it's very hard for you to sort of appreciate the level of frustration that was inside the Poundland Stadium, as it's called now. Used to be Fortress Bescot when I was working in the West Midlands, but there was a lot of negativity that night from the away end, and I did think, that's a downward trend. But I think he has got a plan, but it's just trying to define it at the moment, and for players to get used to it. And I'm certain that a lot of those experienced players that aren't in the fold. I mean, Connor Cody's played, I think, 7 minutes this season as well. They're not going to be on board with it, and they're going to be dissatisfied with what's happening at the moment. But he's made his decisions. Let's see if it works out for him. And that was a massive weekend for him last week.
Yeah, massive win. We're going to get on to the 7 games in a minute, but Rick obviously wants to add something on to the topic we've discussed. Right, Rick? I'll let you discuss.
Yeah, just on what Rob said there about the attacking freedom that Cooper seems to be giving the players, and that they might be struggling with that. I 100% agree, and I think the stats show that whilst freedom in the attacking third should and could be beneficial, you look at the chance creation, it's down. I think we might be the bottom of the league for chances created. We certainly were going into the Bournemouth game. But it shows that we take the majority of the chances that we create, certainly on target. A lot that's off of Vardy and players like that. But we've gone from Maresca, where if you look at last season in the patterns of play, we would always attack in a 5 and defend in a 5. Under Cooper, it's quite clear that we only attack in a 4. So whilst he might give creative freedom to those that are the 4 going forward, we're one less in attack. And, you know, I've been quite vocal about the signing of Jordan Ayew, because I knew he'd come in here as one of our integral players under Cooper, because Cooper absolutely loves the Ayew brothers. They're like football pioneers to him for some reason. But Jordan Ayew is a master at not having any shots and not creating anything. So actually, that 4 that you're attacking with, you're really attacking with a 3. So it's no surprise that we're struggling to create, we're struggling to score, albeit we are scoring, you know, our fair share from the chances we create. And the incredulous thing about it all is, at the back, we're also propping up the table in the amount of chances we concede. So the attacking freedom that he's giving to his team, whilst also playing quite a conservative, you know, back 4 with 2 defensive midfielders, that's not necessarily working either, because we're affording the opposition a lot of chances. So there's a hell of a lot of work for him to do, and you know, he'll be aware of that. I'm sure he's getting the analysts badgering him after every game to look at that. But yeah, there's this, his plan, his identity, whatever it is, it's not working. It really isn't.
I think there's obviously things in Cooper's game that he obviously has to change, doesn't he, Rob, going into after the international break. Before the start of the season, he spoke about having time out of football. He'd learned a lot about himself, about different things, about what he could have done and what he can do.
Being on a personal journey.
Them types of comments with him.
Yeah, I can draw comparisons with Brendan Rodgers in those. I'm sure he did. You know, he spent the time on an emotional journey or whatever it was, but ultimately, you know, fans are just going to judge on what they see. You can't fool fans. You know, you can say whatever you like in the media, and Steve has been very good with the media so far. He's been open, incredibly open at times, and you know, he's been trying to win the PR battle. He knows that he's got to earn credit, as he says, with the supporters. I think the old Nottingham Forest thing is over-egged. I don't think Leicester fans really care about.
Well, we had a captain from who we signed from Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots. I mean, Martin O'Neill.
That went on to big things, Rob.
Yeah, Wes Morgan. Yeah, I mean, there's. I don't think fans really care about. They just care about what manager he is and what the ethos is, and you know, it's been interesting so far to see how the team's developing, because we've seen it from game to game how it's adjusted, and I've obviously go to all the press conferences, so I listen to him, and obviously he talks as well after. You know, he doesn't just come in and speak down the microphone. He does talk to us afterwards as well about certain things, and we're still learning about how he sees certain individuals and how he sees the game plan. So, yeah, it's been a learning curve. I haven't signed an NDA, by the way. If anyone wants to ask the question. I'll tell them if I can. But you know, it's I'm not in the paid employment of the football club as well. Let me just clarify that as well, just because sometimes I choose to be a bit more positive than, but I also get accused of being negative as well. So you know, ask away. But no, I'm still making my mind up about how he's going to go about this, and how he's going to win certain individuals over, and how he's going to win the fans over ultimately, because they're your biggest judges. They're sitting in recess at the moment, I think, and waiting to deliver their verdict. Some already have, but no, it's going to be interesting how it goes.
Yeah, talking about goals and that, some would question the XG of goals.
Yeah, I mean, I did an explanation of that in a piece. I think I did after the Saturday game. We got the XG, and they had probably the lowest XG of goals expected, and also conceded. Not exceeded. They were expected to concede more. I mean, that's not a great stat. That is not a great stat when you look at those statistics. It's they are converting a huge proportion of the chances of the Greeks. They're not creating a hell of a lot. And also they've conceded so many shots. It was when after the Arsenal game I did it. Madsen Manson said like 36 shots on goal. We can't keep conceding that many shots on goal. Admittedly, it's Arsenal. But then you looked at the overall stats, and they're still particularly high. I mean, he's overworked. Madsen Manson. He's a great goalkeeper, by the way. I mean, how long they're going to keep him? I do worry about that because. But then again, the model is going to be having to sell an asset every summer, and he could be the next asset they have to sell.
Yeah, before I go on to Rick's question for you, Rob, touching on Cooper's press conferences, the guy talks a good game, innit? He does. He talks about the attacking side of his game, but you struggle as fans to see it. Some would say Steve Cooper is a very cautious manager. You've watched the majority of games this season where, first off, we barely have any chances. It's like we're too cautious to get near goal, and we defend and we let teams on us quite a bit. And that proves it with how many chances teams have had against us than what we've had against them. And I think that's something you question with him. And, fans want to see a real proactive manager and someone who likes to really attack the game from the start. I mean, against Bournemouth, we did in the first half. Against Palace, we did. But in other games, you kind of question it and think, could he actually maybe tweak a few things and actually go attacking and really work them players differently? Because he's got a squad he can get the real best out of him. He proved it last season in the Championship. I know the Premier League's a more difficult and tougher league, but I think with the squad he's got, it's a hungry squad who wants to really succeed. That confidence level, if you can get it up, I think we're fantastic with working with. But that's maybe something that the players are frustrated that he's not getting the best out of them in it to their abilities. Rick, I'm going to come to you with a question. What you've got for Rob Tanner, mate?
Yeah, it was just going back to a point earlier that Rob had made. I mean, answer this as diplomatically as you can, but do you think that the squad, the players, are aligned with Cooper, or do you think there are problems already? I mean, there's been a few media outlets that have alluded to it. How reputable they are, we don't know. But the decision making around Ricardo, Vestergaard, he dropped Winks, which was a big call. I don't necessarily disagree with Winksy dropping out for a game, because I thought of the three of Skip, Ndidi, and him, he's probably the one that's had a few iffy games of late. So that's not a bad thing per se. But then the introduction of Samare over him on Saturday may well have been a nod to say you're not immediately coming back in. And those three were they were Maresca boys, weren't they? They were his poster boys for the possession-based football. So,
key players.
Is there anything that you've heard that might align directly, indirectly with there being a bit of beef?
Obviously, I speak to people that are around certain individuals around the team, and you expect to hear discontent. Obviously, Yannick's gone from being pariahed under Brendan Rodgers to being messiahed under Enzo Maresca to suddenly being out in the cold again. And I know he had an ankle injury, but even though he had an ankle, I don't think he would have been playing. So, you're going to hear the negatives. I think the biggest call that I've heard, the biggest suggestion is that having gone from that Enzo Maresca model, they're struggling to understand what the plan is. What is expected of them on a Saturday. As I said earlier, I don't think there's a lack of effort. It's not like Claude Puel, where I think that there was just total confusion until there was total shutdown towards the end of the Claude Puel reign. I mean, there were, people were just upset the fact that he wouldn't communicate to them. I think that, from what I hear, most of the players are very much on board in terms of Cooper's a nice guy. We like him. He's respectful. He doesn't like being called boss or gaffer. It's Coops or Steve. He wants to be on a level sort of playing field with them. There's no hierarchy. Everybody's in it together. He's trying to foster this this spirit of we're all in this. We've all got to dig and fight for each other. I think there's certain individuals that are still a little bit perplexed about what's expected of them. I think when a manager comes in, takes over a successful team, and it was a successful team, it got them promoted. So, I think that there is an element of, well, this is different, and we've got to adjust, and some don't adjust as quick as others. So I think there is an element in the squad of people going, not sure about where we're going with this. But I don't think there's a universal, we don't like Steve Cooper. It's just they don't quite get what they're being asked to do. I think that's what I've been told.
I just find it fascinating that at interview stage, when Top and Rudkin, if Top was there, certainly Rudkin would have done, they would have got into the nitty gritty details of the playing squad and what Cooper's sort of ideas were for the future. And Vestergaard was sitting on a new 3-year deal that hadn't yet been announced. Ricardo, these players, surely that would have been discussed, and I'll be fascinated to see and hear how comfortable the execs were in Cooper's views on there, because once again we've got an element of the squad that is not being fancied by the management. And again, I look back, Maresca leaving. Did the club want Maresca to leave? I don't think so. I don't think Top and Rudkin wanted him to leave. So he would have been our manager going into this season. He would have played a completely different style of football to what Steve Cooper's doing. He would have encouraged and demanded a completely different type of player. And he would have built his team around the handful of players that are not playing at the minute. So on what planet, as these conversations with Steve Cooper, as they thought, okay, yeah, he is the right man for the job? That's what I'm really struggling to get my head around. And again, it's not Cooper's fault. It's once again the disconnect between board, management, and then the fans sat there in the vacuum of no communication from the top, saying, what on earth's going on now then?
Well, I honestly think, it's a bit like when they sacked Brendan Rodgers and they went round the Wrekin trying to find somebody to come in for it. They had a clear vision of who they wanted in, but they didn't want that person didn't want the job. That was Graham Potter, and so they ended up with Enzo, going in a different direction with Enzo, and it incredibly worked. Then they find themselves, Enzo's gone. That wasn't predicted. I didn't think after just one season he would go to Chelsea, but obviously he couldn't turn that job down. So they're at square one. They again went for Graham Potter. Graham was dragging his heels a little bit. There was other options that could have been out there for him. His stock was still relatively high, although the longer he's out of the game, that stock level's going to drop. And I think they just ran out of patience and went for Steve Cooper because they saw what he did at Forest in terms of keeping Forest up. So it is another departure, and it is, a fractured way of thinking in terms of, you invested so much in Enzo Maresca and his style of football and his identity. How much is Steve Cooper similar to that? And he's not. He's similar in certain ways, but he's more of a Brendan type signing for me. So I think they found themselves in a really tough position where You know, who wants this job that they obviously Kieran at Ipswich, they would love to have him, but they weren't going to get him. There was other options, but you can't entice them in sometimes, especially at that time. And I certainly think this was the case in terms of the transfer window, but also in terms of the appointing the new manager. There was the prospect of a points deduction, PSR charges, and the inevitability potentially of them being relegated again back to the Championship. And when they sacked Brendan Rodgers, a lot of the targets like Adi Huta that they went for or investigated were reluctant to come because they didn't want to manage in the Championship. I mean, the reason Enzo got his opportunity at Leicester was because they were in the Championship. If they'd still been in the Premier League, probably unlikely that they would have gone down the Enzo Maresca route. So getting back up into the Premier League and the prospect of potentially a relegation, points deduction, you know, make it a really, really tough job. Not many managers would want that on their CV. And I think Steve Cooper's stepped up to some extent. Whether he's going to be, you know, the right appointment, time will tell. But yeah, that's probably where we're at with that. I mean, in terms of, I saw some people asking about Ricardo. Yeah. Let me just, I mean, he's been asked a couple of times about Ricardo, why he's not playing, why he's gone for James Justin and Victor Christiansen. And it's just basically down to athleticism. I think he probably looks at Ricardo and thinks he can't offer the same level of aggressiveness in the game. I mean, he wants everybody to up their stats in running. They've got to cover ground if they're going to play under Steve Cooper. I mean, that's probably why Samari came on at the weekend as well. Although, ironically, I don't think Samari's that hard working a midfielder. Sometimes he's exactly. That's my reading of it as well. Sometimes he looks like he's not going to cover the ground that you want. You know, he's a talented player, but you've got to light a firework up his bum sometimes to get him going. But I think that's why he's gone for James Justin and Victor Christiansen, just the youth, their athleticism to get up and down and cover the ground that he needs. Ricardo's a fantastic footballer. You know, he as all those guys are, Vestergaard and Winks. You know, they're great footballers in terms of the technical aspects of the game, but I think Cooper is going in a different direction. He wants runners, he wants aggressiveness, he wants Leicester City to be a hard-working side.
But not a single minute he's playing.
I know it is baffling.
And again, at what point is he going to give any of these players minutes? Because again, my concern is he's already running a very small squad into the ground. Because we saw it with other managers where Enzo did it to a certain degree last season. He started off the season where he would rotate, he would bring players on. When did he go off after 55 minutes, regardless of what?
At left back.
Love that. As in, at what point does he start to give players minutes, or he's got no choice to give them minutes if we get injuries? James Justin's had horrendous injuries, as bad if not worse than Ricardo, and yet he's not even giving him a single minute, and we've got no other options than Ricardo.
Well, absolutely. It's a totally it is a strange situation for a player of Ricardo's quality not to have featured at all in the Premier League. I totally accept that. I mean, I'm looking at some of the comment. I'm not defending Kurt. I'm trying to explain his thought process. I'm not saying that's my opinion. I'm saying that's his thought process. So when he thinks that, Ricardo isn't the sort of player that is going to get up and down and do the work that James Justin's going to do, I mean, that's his thought process. It's not mine. I mean, I think Ricardo would be excellent playing in midfield now. As he's getting older and the injuries, you don't have to have that athleticism out of him, but he's still a technically gifted player. He could play sitting there alongside Harry Winks, as we've seen before.
Yeah, Ricardo's our best fullback in Rob. Let's be honest. One of our best.
I mean, the modern game's changing in terms of conventional fullbacks. I mean, I've written a piece today about England and how Lee Carsley's going to approach these next 2 games. He doesn't play with conventional fullbacks either. He's going to have somebody on the left side that's going to sit in as a third centre-back, and Trent Alexander-Arnold's going to go into midfield. It's like the game changes, the philosophies of the football changes. We don't see attacking fullbacks like we used to do.
Nope. Rob, let's touch on the 7 games in the league and 2 in the cup. We started off the season, Tottenham at home, 1-1 draw. Jamie Vardy scored, could have had another in that game as well. Tottenham battered us in the first half, let's be honest. Second half, pulled our finger out. Jamie Vardy drank a Red Bull at half time, and we got going. And a 1-1 draw, big result for us, wasn't it, Rob, to kick off the season?
Oh, yeah, it was. It was a great result when you look at the context of the game. I mean, Tottenham should have been well out of sight at half time, but then they did Tottenham things, didn't they, in the second half? Tottenham being Tottenham. I mean, we've seen it a lot at the moment, and certainly against Brighton. I mean, that was surreal. So that was a good start. Get a point on the board when in a game where you weren't expected to get anything. To show a bit of fighting spirit, to come back. I mean, I did a piece again. I know I keep plugging my pieces, but looking at Leicester's history in the Premier League of going behind in games. They go behind incredibly often in the last something like 27 Premier League games over 2 spells. And this season, 5 times in 7 games, they've gone behind in games. They're slow starters in games. So to come back and get a point, a good start, I thought.
Rick, we look at the next league game. Fulham away, 2-1 defeat. Tranmere in the cup. Jordan Ayew scores an absolute belter. Villa at home. Referee antics, and Leicester had Villa on the back foot in times in that game. Again, questionable with Cooper, where we could have gone attacking from the start. Cautious to start off with. Villa get the first goal. They get the second when we're on top in them opening 15 minutes of the second half. We get one back, and it's, we're having to put real shift in. I thought that second half we did, but talk to me about the Villa, Fulham, and Tranmere games.
Yeah, I mean, working backwards, the Villa game, it was typical of Cooper. He's a moments manager, in my opinion, and he was umming and ahhing about whether to bring players on in the second half, and he was too slow to do so. And as he was sort of chuntering onto his assistants and readying players, they went 2-0 up, and then he made his changes, and we got one back in Buonanotte, and it was an exciting finish to the game. And I think, whilst I keep going on about there being no identity to Cooper's sort of style of football, I think what we've been very good at doing, and I think why he does do quite well, is when you get the chaotic elements in games, that's where we're actually quite good. That sort of, there's always a period in a game where it gets a bit frenetic. And that's where, under perhaps previous regimes, they don't like that as managers. They don't want to see that end-to-end fast, direct football. And I think that suits Cooper. And we saw that in the Villa game. Once we got that goal back, we were pushing forward. And could we have got a point there? He was incensed that we should have had a penalty. The one on Vardy in the last minute, I think it would have been very, very soft, but, seen them given. So whilst, we may have nicked something, I think, the decision-making prior to going 2-0 down is what cost us the game. Tranmere game, that was, first half was pretty workmanlike. If I recall, it's a while ago, isn't it? But he picked a fairly strong team. We got then a fair few more goals, and then he managed to bring on Alves, who had a impressive cameo, and Chris Popov. And overall, we got the job done, didn't we? Against League 2 opposition. The Fulham game, I think that was probably the first example of not knowing whether to stick or twist So slow start in the game. Got back with the equaliser from Fez. Got in to half-time 1-1. They probably should have been 2-0 up before we got back to 1-1. I seem to recall, was it Muniz or one of them had quite a good chance straight after they'd scored. But nonetheless, we equalised. And second half, I'm pretty sure we didn't have a single shot in that second half, which has been a theme of our second halves when we've not either been behind and he didn't know what to do. And the longer the game went on, he was probably in let's try and contain this. They got the second goal and it was then pretty much done and dusted. And whilst fans would say, well, Fulham's a tough place to go, they've got a good home record in the last year or so under Silva. Also, there was plenty there to say we could have been braver. And we gave up a lot of chances once again in a game that we tried to sit back on. And that's where I'm at a loss with Leicester. Fine, be defensive, but then snuff out the chances. We're defensive, but concede a lot of chances, which is a bit baffling.
Rob, Crystal Palace, Everton, two different complete games, if we're honest. Crystal Palace game, we get the first goal with Jamie Vardy. We're on top in that first half. I thought we started
I thought it was excellent.
Very good.
But I thought it was very good, very encouraging the first half. But then obviously, scoring the second goal right at the start of the second half, and then the controversial first Mateta goal. I still say if Wout Faes had defended the near post and just got cut across that we wouldn't be talking about VAR. And I've been a little bit critical of Faes to start with. I thought he was excellent on the weekend, but I think he's made a number of mistakes so far this season where he's been caught out of position. He's been caught wandering, especially for the Everton goal as well. He tracked a player out wide. At some point, as a centre half, you got to pass somebody on. You don't go chasing them out to the touchline, and that left the space for the pass inside for Ndai to come in and score the goal. He gets impulsive. He gets like sometimes he wants to do too much. It's almost like he's too keen, too hungry, and he gets caught out of position. And that moment at Crystal Palace, I thought if you just come along, just sense the danger and steps across. Don't worry about offside. You can't see what's behind him, so why is he worrying about players playing somebody offside? Because you can't see him. So just go across and deal with the ball. Then we wouldn't be talking about that situation, VAR, and all everything, the shenanigans that followed it, which has been a feature at the start of the season, to be honest. Cooper and the officials, a little bit too much, really. Where I think he's got to rein it in now, focus on his team and not focus on the officials. I know how he feels about the current officials, but that was that was a really disappointing. And then the changes I mentioned earlier, the feature I've got running about the substitutions. He made defensive substitutions because they played six up top. He brought on Connor Cody and made several other changes to try and counter that fact they were playing six at the top, and it cost him because Connor made a really unfortunate error. Yeah, and I really like Connor. He's a lovely guy, and he's so honest. And I watched him walking down the tunnel after, and my heart bled for him. You could see how devastated he was because he just wasn't up to the tempo of the game coming into the game that late. And the ricochet came off, and he went to play the ball, and he caught the lad, and it was a clear penalty, no dispute. So those two were very disappointing games, and that was the point where I thought, how are people going to react to this now? And obviously then, we had the Walsall game.
Poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously
Cooper sorted out with a kind of chance and stuff
if you weren't in the ground, it's very hard to sort of like explain the depth of feeling. I mean, there was 2,500. Pretty much 2,500 Leicester fans that night in that ground, and they were very clear how they felt that night, and I think that was the first time Steve Cooper went, okay, I can see the challenge that faces me now, because and then he was talking about winning credit with them, because they didn't. It wasn't Cooper out, but it was Cooper sort it out, and then it was, Premier League, you're having a laugh, and then it was this is embarrassing. So that the fans were very vocal that night.
Yeah, rightfully so. Rick, I'm going to talk to you about two games. We'll start with the Arsenal game, and then we'll move on to Saturday's win against Bournemouth. Talk to me about the Arsenal game. I mean, set up, you could say in the first half we were quite defensive. I mean, you probably will be against a quality Arsenal side who, I think Steve Cooper tried to shut down the space and that of Arsenal, and obviously the Arsenal did get through twice. They scored 2 goals, which some would say, you could probably say, poor defending for both goals from Leicester, with Martinelli's one and Trossard's one where we've let him cut inside and score. Talk to me about the Arsenal game. I mean, we did get back into it. James Justin gets a goal, and then James Justin again with his second goal was an absolute belter. We're 2-2. We're cruising into getting a point, and we talk about Steve Cooper's substitutions, and I don't think they helped in the game, and Arsenal managed to score 2 goals with 3 minutes left in a 7.
Yeah, look, whatever tactics you deploy away at Arsenal, you're going to be up against it, and I don't think he did anything massively surprising or massively wrong. I think the tactics he deployed, I don't think the players are intense enough and disciplined enough to do it. The 2 goals in the first half, they came from crosses into the box along the ground, in between the back four and the defensive midfielders that were sitting in a low block. Winks was at fault for at least one of them. So I'd put that more on the players than Cooper himself in the tactics that were picked. That said, it was one of the record amount of shots in a game. Certainly shots on target that Hermansen had saved, etc. So
outstanding.
It was the best goalkeeping performance I've seen since Kasper Schmeichel in the FA Cup final.
13 saves, one off from getting the record, which is 14.
Yeah, and that's the stats of the Arsenal game probably intensify the stats season to date in the amount of shots we've conceded and the XG against that we should have conceded a lot more goals than we have. I think it's something like 5. I think Hermansen's saved 5 more than he should have, or something daft like that after 7 games. But I think we were very, very fortunate, stroke efficient, to get back into the game, and it took some bravery and credit to the team for not giving up. And James Justin's probably 1 goal of the season, 2 seasons on the spin now, hasn't he? Because I challenge any other player to score a better second goal than that. But it was just galling that, again, we conceded goals in injury time away from home, the second away game running in the league, to drop points. And could we have been a little bit braver in the substitutions to see out the game? I don't know. At the minute, his subs are not working, whether he makes them or doesn't make them. So it's easy as fans to keep using that as a stick to beat him with. But whether that's a fair one in that game, I don't know.
Yeah, guys, if you enjoyed this stream, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Go and check out The Athletic with Rob Tanner. Rob Tanner goes into real depth in his reports about Leicester with tactics and that. So go and check out that. Go and check out the Big Strong Leicester Boys, a very good Leicester City podcast from the lads. Go and check them out. I think they're on for about an hour and a half, aren't they, sometimes? And they're very in-depth, and it's a good laugh as well to listen to.
You can watch the Titanic or fly halfway to New York before one of our pods ends.
Jack, can you also, Rick, you're running the half marathon this weekend for a very worthy cause.
Shout that out.
If anybody wants to donate, can you tell us where to donate?
Yeah, sure. There's a Just Giving page that I've set up. It is on our Twitter handle, or X handle, as we now refer to it. We're running on behalf of LAMP, mental health charity that we're affiliated with. They do great work in Leicestershire and beyond. Cannot emphasise how important they are, and we've got so much time and love for them. So yeah, if anyone's got a few quid to donate, or if you're down there on Sunday to watch me waddling about, then yeah, much appreciated. But yeah, thanks Rob for reminding me, because I probably would have forgot.
Yeah, it's a valiant effort, mate. It's brilliant that you're doing it.
Good luck with it. I'll say it again, Rob and the Athletic are the best way for American supporters to follow the Prem. Yeah, Rob does a good job with the Athletic. I know sometimes he gets good things and bad things, but that's the old way of a reporter in journalism.
Oh, you take the rough with the smooth, Jack. You take the rough with the smooth. That's what beer's for.
Talk to me, lads, about the Bournemouth game. Massive 3 points, a much needed 3 points. Some would say it's got the monkey off the back of Steve Cooper. First off, fantastic. I'm going to touch on one player, Facundo Buonanotte, who I thought was outstanding in that first half. Got the goal, which he fully deserved. Jamie Vardy, I think he kind of kicked the floor, didn't he? And his boot come off. And on another day, Jamie Vardy scores that, doesn't he, Rick? Second half, though, backs to the walls, wasn't it? Hermanson pulled out some saves. VAR came for the call again. And then Leicester had to really hold their own. And I thought Steve Cooper's Blue Army held their own well against Bournemouth with the amount of chances Bournemouth put at us.
Yeah, I mean, relieved to get the win. We needed it. Cooper needed it. His record prior to coming to Leicester, he was on a bad one, hence getting the sack at Forest. So it's probably understandable. Second half, things got a bit hairy, but frustrating that at 55 minutes onwards, that was what we decided was the only way to see out a game.
Yeah, Bournemouth as well.
Yeah, Bournemouth are one of the leading teams for chance creation. I think below Man City and Tottenham, they're the third best, or were going into the Leicester game. They were always going to create chances, and they did. Before we scored, they had a good chance. It was Senesi. Whether that would have been ruled out, I don't know. It was tight. But they really threw it at us second half. After a first half where, as you say, Buonanotte was exceptional. He was at the heart of everything we did. And I don't think enough's been said about him, probably because he's not ours. And you don't fall in love with lone players, right? We've done it before.
Bournemouth Brian won't want to sell him more than Rick, let's be honest.
Well, or if they do, it's going to be north of what we pay. It's going to be more than what we'd be willing to pay. So it's a real shame. But I think, at the risk of diverging, we ought to be targeting the South American market, because Brighton paid $5 million for Buonanotte when he was 18. Why can't we go and get a couple of those players in there? They're not always going to work, but it's a market.
Could find the next Messi.
And we're 100%. We've never had a bad Argentinian player, so go keep tapping into that market. But yeah, first half was really encouraging, and I'm going to try and suspend my irritation of that second half revert to type.
We scored the first goal at home, which is a big confidence boost for the team.
Well, took the lead for the first time,
yeah. Second time this season, which is a boost, isn't it, Rob, for Leicester? It proves that we don't always have to go behind. We can actually go in front sometimes, which is a positive for fans. But how did you indulge that Bournemouth performance?
Yeah, I thought it was dogged. They showed a lot of determination so far. I mean, as I wrote in my match piece, Facundo Buonanotte was the difference because of that quality that he brings. But I think Cooper's side are trying to be very workmanlike in their approach and difficult to beat. But you need that X factor at the top end of the pitch. And then you look at the bench, and this is what baffles me a little bit. He had El Canoes. They spent £20 million on this young lad. And people I've spoken to in Belgium, and I've got a piece waiting to run when he actually does something significant. where they're telling me Leicester have got an absolute bargain. They're saying he could be worth double that. This is a kid that's like, he's focused, he's determined. He could be a real player. We've hardly seen him. And Fatal, we've hardly seen him this season. There is so much potential on that bench as well. Get him on a little bit earlier in games. I can imagine why Leicester fans are a little bit frustrated at the moment, because you don't know until you see them on the pitch, and at the moment it's the game management leaves me a little bit skeptical. Why we're not seeing some of these talents coming on a little bit earlier, and they are talents. I mean, it's not. I mean, we know Abdul could take the Premier League by storm. If you give him a bit of time, and that's why they've invested £14 million in him, because they think they're going to earn double from a sell-on in the future. So there are some signs of encouragement for me, but I think there's more potential.
Fair point. Before we get on to best player of the season so far and the worst players, talk to me, Rick, about a Coley and Wild Faster partnership. Talk to me about that. I mean, since the Coleys came in, them two look very good together. Looks like they're identifying each other's play quite well defensively, and they're making a very good partnership about themselves, them two.
Yeah, I said this on our podcast last night. I mean, Fez has had a very good season, I think, individually, as has Akoli. Akoli surprised me pre-season. He looked a little bit concerning, let's say, in a few of his performances. He looked limited on the ball. He's been far better in that regard in the Premier League. Have we defended well collectively? I'm not so sure we have. Hence, you look at the stats, we've conceded a fair amount of goals, which understandable for a team struggling at the bottom of the league. We should and could have conceded a lot more, looking at what Hermansen's had to do. So therefore, I don't think we have defended that well. But they are building a partnership together that I think at a base level, they're showing a bit more about them than, let's say, the defenders that we had in 22-23, where I thought our defence structure was the pits. So whether it's the defence themselves or those protecting them, but again, if you ask me about Skip and Diddy Winks, I'm not going to slate their performances this season, because between them there's been some real promise there too. So maybe expectations on where we're at, we're going to see a lot of chances conceded. We're going to concede a lot of goals. That doesn't necessarily mean we're defended badly. I'm nervous to say that they're doing really well, but there's promise there, and I think that's far more. It surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be that pairing, put it that way. But he's sticking with that, and I like that. You don't chop and change your defenders too much. Not when you're at the bottom of the table, and not at the start. Maybe as the season goes on, if you need to. But so I get why he's sticking with that. And it's pretty. It's got signs. Put it that way.
Yeah, I'm Rick Singh. I want to touch on this actually, because I've not stabbed Steve Cooper in the back at all this season.
No, we're not
maybe I
back.
criticised him about his substitutions, but that's about it regarding me. But I've never stabbed him in the back. I always said I'd give him a chance, and sometimes it's constructive criticism on his substitutions and that, which obviously people need when you watch the games. But I wouldn't say I've stabbed him in the back once this season, but the fact is we are a weaker team now than that this time of last year. Maresca defected Chelsea in the round. Do you know what? I think we've got a very good squad with what can compete in the Premier League. I don't think we... I mean, yes, we sold Dewsbury Hall to Chelsea. Maresca defected to Chelsea, ran to Chelsea. I wouldn't say ran to Chelsea, but To be fair, we sold Dewsbury Hall for, what was it, £30 million? Was it, Rob? 40 million in the end.
But it's rising with add-ons. But
I think we have
is
strengthened in some departments of the squad. Maybe we could have strengthened a bit more better, you could say. But yeah, I think that centre attacking midfield role we always needed to strengthen. To be fair, so I'm glad you've brought it up, Rick. To be fair,
they're
mate,
playing
which
a
is
different
always
way
good to
though,
do.
Jack. As well, you're not playing with the high eights now. There's a different way under Steve Cooper. So it's very hard to judge at the moment. As I said, it's going to take a bit more time. We're only 7 Premier League games in. It's going to take a bit more time to judge. And people settling in and players getting used to it. As I said earlier, there's a few players that understandably you would think will be sceptical at the moment because they're not playing. So their representatives are going to be a little bit more negative than others. But and there's other things that have come out as well over the last few weeks. But you just got to give it a bit of time and see. When we get to the third international window, after we've had the Southampton and the Forest and the Ipswich game, then I think we can probably make a few more definitive decisions.
Yeah, I think with me, people's always asked, are you Cooper or not Cooper out? And I don't like to answer the question. I always like to give him a chance and see if he can turn a corner with the results, which is obviously 3 draws and a win. And I mean, 6 points. We're averaging just under a point a game, so we are getting points. We're 15th. I mean, if you'd said to me at the start of the season, where would you like to finish? I'd say anything above the relegation zone, which I think is a real target for Leicester this season, Rick.
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking me, am I Cooper in or Cooper out, you know fully well what my answer is there. And it's purely because, let's say we stay up, and let's say we stay up on 30 points, which may be all it takes. 28 points would have kept us up last season. Is that an achievement? The only achievement is we're not in the Championship, and for a lot of people, that's the priority. But then what? So let's say we stay up. What then? Because Steve Cooper is not going to change. He's not suddenly going to be the next season shackles off, attacking football, giving more young players a chance. He won't. It'll be more of the same. So if you're behind Steve Cooper's ideology, fair play, bully for you. I'm not. I want more. And this isn't delusions of grandeur or anything like that. There's certain priorities and non-negotiables that I want my football club to do. One of them is the development of young players above everything. So whilst you want to succeed as well, the model of our ideology is different to what Cooper's mandate is at the minute. Whether that's coming from the top and he's just going along with that, I'm not sure. I think there's some confusion there based on what we've done in the past. So yeah, I accept he's not going anywhere right now, and it would be harsh to get rid of him when we're 15 and there's clubs below us still waiting for their first win of the season. I get that. What I would immediately counter that with internally, though, because otherwise people will be like, shut up, just stop going on about it, is what then, though? Well, what is he going to do? And if he isn't going to change, and if there is, then what is the point? I think the only reason why we appointed him was because we were facing a points deduction in the eyes of prospective managers. Not in the eyes of the club. They must have been confident we were going to get cleared. But convincing managers of that wouldn't have been that easy. So now that there's a level playing field again, and that threat is negated until we potentially run into trouble going down again, and that being a bigger concern if we do go down, is there a better candidate out there now that would take it? And if there is, that suits our ambition and suits the way that our club should be aligned, this training ground being the best in the country, our academy, trying to put it up there with the very best. If there is, then that would be the route I would go down. But again, it would be harsh. And I don't think they'd be ready to do that yet. That said, this regime feels very much like the Craig Shakespeare regime, where in 2017-18, after 7 or 8 games, Vichai did ruthlessly get rid of Shakespeare. He had plenty of goodwill, credit in the bank. So who knows whether we would, but right now it doesn't look like that would happen.
No, it's just about, he's got some big games coming up, hasn't he, Rob? Southampton.
Yeah. Well, I've experienced this twice before. Paulo Sousa lasted 9 games. Shakespeare lasted 8. So, I mean, they're different regimes, but they were the same regime, if you know what I mean. Because when Paulo came in, it was the transition. They were in the process from going from Milan Mandaric to King Power. So we knew the direction they were travelling in then. And obviously that was a particularly poor start for Paulo, who I thought would have been a success long term because of the way. I mean, if you had Paulo Sousa coming in now, it might have been a totally different proposition. But at the time in the Championship, it just didn't work. The players were baffled. I can remember very few times I've been invited to watch a training session by any Leicester manager. But Paulo Sousa invited us to go and watch a training session on the side of a pitch at a university training ground in Portsmouth around that time. And they just won in the League Cup on the Tuesday, and they were all staying down there. So we all stayed down there for the whole week. And we watched a training session, and I watched and I saw Bruno Berner and Robbie Nielsen being used like as attacking, almost like wingers, attacking fullbacks. And I thought, Championship, this is going to be interesting. And it didn't work because they got hammered on the Friday night TV after that. And there was the whole Milan Mandaric standing up and waving at the Portsmouth fans as they sang his name, and Leicester fans booed him. That was the transition. So I can see, managers can have a short life in positions when results aren't coming. So I don't feel that's the case this time. I feel he's going to be given a little bit more time than Shaky did. You can argue the validity of that, but it's a difficult one for Cooper at the moment. He's got to get results over the next 3 games. These are really key games for him, and they can set the tone for the rest of the season. This is a really key moment.
I agree. He's got to take it to both fans, and he get as many points as possible from these games. They're very winnable games, aren't they? And it's ones that we need to get points out of, where you probably look at the start of the season where you pick your teams where you need to get points out of, and these are the types of teams you need to. Rob, I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to go to Rick. Best player of the season so far, if you had to pick one each.
I've been really impressed with Collie. I really think he's been a really good signing. Yeah, I'd go with Caleb, and Buonanotte been decent as well. We've seen limited minutes really from him. He's had fits and starts, but he's been really effective. He leads all the stats that I've been looking at. Even now, I've been looking at the stats for shots on target and passes, and he's right up there for everything that Leicester have done positively this season. So he's been a good signing, even though on loan. So I hope El Kanous can step up as well, because they've spent £20 million on him. So we'd like to see him feature as well. But Caleb Coley and Buonanotte for me.
Rick?
Mads Hermansen and Buonanotte. Hermansen's performances speak for themselves, don't they? He's kept us in games as well. And then Buonanotte, 2 goals, 2 assists already. As Rob says, he's not played loads, whether that's injuries struggling with or some of Cooper's tactics. But it looks really, really promising, and we've just got to enjoy what we see from him, because I think it's a one season only gig. But if he keeps us up, then we'll be happy, won't we?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Mads and Buonanotte. I think Mads has had a fantastic start to the season. He's really stepped up his game and he's proven he can be very good in the Premier League. But Winote's settled in well. You can see the flair from him, how good he is, skillful. He's very knowledgeable in getting the attack on. And he seems like a lad who is very passionate about his football and he enjoys his football. And I don't think we can say much more about him, to be honest. I think he's been fantastic. Rob, I'm going to come to you with worst player. Who's not really tickled your fancy so far? Who you feel you could get more out of?
Who you could get more out of, right?
Who you feel like has not been the best is what you can.
Well, I wouldn't say worst player, but the player you can get more out of is Abdul Fattah if you play him. So, I mean, I predicted him at the start of the season as being somebody that's going to make an impact in the Premier League because I genuinely believe he can make an impact. So, I'd say Fattah for that. So, I wouldn't say he's the worst player, but I'm saying he's the player that can make more of an impact than he's been given the opportunity to do so at the moment. In terms of players that have underperformed, I wouldn't like to say really because I don't think there's anybody that's not been trying.
Fair enough, Rick.
I'll answer this, Rob.
Go on then.
No. No, it's not nice to obviously. No, I mean, it's funny what you say about Fattah because I 100% agree there. In the reasons not to pick Fattah that are usually the reasons why Flair wingers aren't picked is because defensively they're not very good. Fattah's strengths are his defensive game. He's borderline elite. Where you look at all of his defensive stats, incredible. Blows Jordan Ayew out of the water in that regard. And yet Ayew's been played as a right winger or sometimes beyond the striker for his experience and probably because of his defensive protection. That makes no sense to me. Not when you've got somebody like Fattah who is good defensively and very creative. So I'm no fan of Jordan Ayew, and I think he's not offered a single positive thing to this football team yet. So for me, he is the standout worst performer. Is he underperforming? No, that's just what he brings to the team. The positives of Ayew is he'll see out games, he'll hold the ball up, he's canny, he'll win free kicks. But he's being played from the start, and he looks unfit to me. Whether he is, I don't know. But he's certainly not doing the things that he's good at, the qualities he's got at 80 minutes because he's already played 80 minutes. So I think that, if Cooper wants to fine-tune things, I'd be looking to bring Ayew on to see out games. And we are, there's been games that we have needed to see out. It's not even like we've had to chase every game. So, I mean, Winks has struggled in recent weeks. But he also started the season quite well. So, I really hope that we don't see Winks drop off and lose his importance to the team because, he's got a lot of qualities. I just think that Winks, Skip and then Diddy, I think it's going to be a bit of a rotation, 2 or 3, and we shouldn't be too precious if one drops out for a game or two. It's just got to be the way that we do it. And that's good, isn't it? We want that healthy competition. And like Rob says, El Kanouche, you want to see him playing a bit more. So whether that's him interchanging with Buonanotte or Buonanotte moves to the right wing and El Kanouche plays behind the striker and Ayew plays the okay, whatever. I think there's just got to be that proactive rotation.
Yeah, I agree. That's it then, boys. Really appreciate you both coming on, taking your time. Hope everyone's enjoyed this stream as well. We've got into real depth about Leicester tonight. Before I let you go, Rick, shout out the podcast, mate.
Yeah, the Big Strong Leicester Boys. If you stick that name in Twitter, X, Instagram, whatever, you'll find us. You might regret doing it when you have to listen to me for 90 minutes every week. But, if you want to get angry about something, then come join us. I see Ross has been asking me to do the woo. Woo! There you are, mate. You can go to bed now.
No worries. Cheers, Rick.
Cheers. Enjoyed it. Thanks for having us. Cheers, Rob.
Cheers, no worries.
Cheers, guys. Mate. I'll give you a hell yeah.
There we go. Rob, thanks for coming on, mate. Appreciate it as always.
No problem.
Give the Athletic a plug, mate, and what you do there.
Yeah, I've been the Leicester City writer for the Athletic for the last 5 years. Previously, the Leicester Mercury. So check us out on the Athletic website.
Yeah. Cheers, Rob. All the best, mate.
Cheers, guys.
That is it from me then. If you've enjoyed the stream, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you haven't subscribed. Please get down and do so. Next week, we'll have the Premier League predictions back for match week 8. We'll also have the Southampton match preview, and coming soon, hopefully, we'll have more for X-Fox in the Box, where we get ex-Leicester City players on and have a chat. But no, I appreciate everyone's coming on, as always, getting your comments in, and yeah, really appreciate everyone getting involved. And yeah, it's good to get everyone's opinions on Leicester City at the minute and how the season's been so far. So I appreciate everyone coming on. Ray, Amric, Ross, Rob Tanner, Callum, the Odd Fish, and yeah, plenty of guys. I appreciate all your comments as always. And yeah, thanks for coming on. Great stream, Jack. Appreciate it. Quality show, Jack, as usual. Appreciate that. Thanks for watching, everyone. Really appreciate it. Come on, the Foxes, and keep it here at the final whistle. Goodbye.
Hi all, thank you for watching the final whistle. If you enjoy all our content, please remember to smash a like, share and subscribe to the channel.